Mr. Chairman, just to explain a little bit of the process, I will call up each subcommittee chair one by one as we proceed through the budget. As Representative Tipton is now, we will save all the questions to the very end. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Chairman Tipton.
All right, Chairman Tipton, if you will proceed on your subject matter, announce it, and then please inform us.
Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you for the privilege to have the opportunity to be the first subcommittee chair to share with this committee and the citizens of the Commonwealth this proposed budget, because it is an investment in our state, it's an investment in our people, and I truly believe that it will revitalize our state and our economy. I chair the Budget Review Subcommittee for Post-Secondary Education, and this is the 6th year that I have served in that role. I have met with many university presidents who have come to me with budget requests, with concerns, and unfortunately, due to decisions that have been made in the past, economic circumstances that have come about, we have not been able to make the investments that we should have. There have actually been cuts. But we have a different story this year, Mr. Chairman. And I'd like to begin sharing with what was in the original House Bill 1. Back in 2017, we passed legislation adopting performance-based funding for our universities, our community college system. We made some changes to that legislation last year in 2021, which I believe were very vital to the future of this process. And I'm pleased to announce that in each year of the biennium, we will be appropriating $50 million to the performance-based funding model. $50 million in each year to these universities, our community colleges across the state. You have 16 colleges in your Kentucky Community College system, so they can compete based on the metrics of that model. We all understand that we have a healthcare crisis right now with COVID. We have a shortage of workers in the healthcare field. I'm pleased to share that this budget funds a new healthcare workforce initiative at $20 million each year. We're going to invest $20 million each year to try to improve our healthcare workforce. Last session, we passed House Bill 8, which dealt with pensions of those qualified members of our pension system. I'm pleased to announce that this budget fully funds the subsidy that's necessary for retirement benefits that are owed under House Bill 8 from last session. As I mentioned, I've talked to a lot of university presidents, and every year they come to me and say, we need asset preservation. We have buildings. We have roof problems. We have infrastructure problems. We need new HVAC systems. And unfortunately, we haven't been able to perform on that. But this year's a different story, Mr. Chairman. We're going to appropriate $350 million. I said $350 million in each year of the biennium. That will be divided between our public universities and the KCTCS system to maintain buildings and facilities. The funds will be available to these institutions based on the square footage of the facilities model established in the performance-based funding model. I touched on workforce and healthcare a minute ago. We have workforce issues all across the Commonwealth. We're going to fully fund a workforce participation trust fund at every KCTCS institution across the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Earlier, I had a subcommittee meeting this morning at 10 o'clock. In that meeting, one of the presenters was President Capilouto at the University of Kentucky. And I asked him to come and share a little bit about Bucks for Brains. I mentioned in my 6 years we've never appropriated any money for Bucks for Brains. And as we had our conversation this morning, I believe we're looking back around 2008, 2010. And what Bucks for Brains is, it's an initiative for research. It's an initiative where they can go out and try to attract individuals to come into our state, primarily at UK and U of L, to do research. And I want to share about one of the benefits of the past investment that's been made. UK has one of the top cancer centers in the country, and that's been made possible because of the past investments that have been made. Unfortunately, Kentucky is #1 in the nation in cancer. The director of that cancer center has a goal. His goal is to cut the rate of cancer in our Commonwealth by 50%. Investments like this in Bucks for Brains will help make that possible. And I'm pleased to announce that we are appropriating $15 million in each year of the budget to revitalize and restart the Bucks for Brains program across our university system. I've been meeting with a lot of people, Mr. Chairman. I had the chairman of the lottery in my office a few minutes ago. We all know that the lottery funds go to our key scholarship, our grants, to help our students attain their goals. And I'm pleased to announce that due to growth in the lottery and the availability of funds, we're going to provide an additional $42 million in each year. That's $42 million that our children or students across the state will be able to utilize in the CAP program, or College Access Program. That's the program for students who attend our public universities. The KTG program, Kentucky Tuition Grant, that is for those students who are in the private institutions, private universities across Kentucky. And our Work Ready Scholarship program for those individuals who do not have an associate's degree and they want to upskill. Those additional funds will be available. Now, all that was as exciting as House Bill 1 originally was. Let me share a little bit about what's in the committee sub for post-secondary. We have reached out to every public university, our Kentucky Community Technical College system, and they've all got capital projects, and we've asked them to prioritize those projects, and we are fully funding the #1 priority capital project for all our public universities and community college system across the state. I talked about scholarships and grants. In order to make that possible, we have KIA, the Kentucky Higher Education Assistance Authority. KIA has never received any general fund appropriation since its existence. It has always been funded by servicing student loans. Unfortunately, there have been changes in Washington to the student loan program. With loan forgiveness, other things, loans have been taken away from them, so they are no longer able to generate the revenue they have in the past. So we are appropriating $6 million in each year of general fund dollars so they can continue to administer these vital programs for our children across the state. Mr. Chairman, this may be one of my favorites. We used to have model schools, laboratory schools at most all of our universities. We only have one left in the state of Kentucky right now, and that's at Eastern Kentucky University. Representative Hatton, we were over there a few weeks ago, and this subject came up. We are going to bond fund a replacement facility for the model lab at Eastern Kentucky University. Mr. Chairman, that completes my report.
Thank you very much, Chairman Tipton. And I'm going to reiterate so I don't make the same mistake I made in the first section. First bill. Committee sub, if you're looking for differences, just for help for digestion purposes, goes back. We had started to gather the information, but this completes, after consultation with each of the universities and KCTS, the sub funds the #1 priority set by, #1 capital project priority by each of those institutions. Number 2, it adds a little over $6 million of general fund money to fully fund the operations budgets of KIA and to actually deal with some needed repairs on roof and HVAC for the functioning of that building facility. And then the third main thing difference on the committee sub is bonded funding for replacement facility for the model lab at EKU. There may be other small, but they would be technical at best, and no other substantive changes of which I am aware. Just wanted to make sure that was clarified. And now I see that we have Representative Reed again, and I have someone else.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. At this time, we have Representative Riley, Chairman of the K-12 Education Subcommittee. Would you please administer the oath?
If you will go ahead and introduce yourself for the record first.
Steve Riley, State Representative, 23rd District.
If you'll raise your right hand, you swear or affirm to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank you and Vice Chairman Reed for all of your hard work. I'd like to thank Frank and Jacob for their hard work and all the LRC staff. I want to especially give a special shout out to my staff on the BR Subcommittee on K through 12 and workforce development. A bunch of them are sitting over here. I couldn't do anything without them. They're great. The education funding is going to be record-breaking. It's done in both a strategic and sustainable way. I'm very excited about what this is going to mean for the youth of Kentucky and their education. First of all, it increases the basic guarantee to a record high dollar amount of $4,100 in the first fiscal year and $4,200 in the second fiscal year. Every dollar SEEK is increased translates into an additional investment of $800,000 in public school districts. That comes to a total of first year $80 million, second year $160 million. Permanently funds the second half of full-day kindergarten in both fiscal years. And I know this has been something that a lot of us have pushed for. Representative Tipton has been very involved in this, and a lot of people in this state for a number of years have been involved in trying to access full-day kindergarten. It increases transportation funding from approximately 51% to a minimum of 70%, with some districts at 100%. And I know this has been something that's been pushed a great deal over the last few years because of increasing transportation costs. It increases funding to eligible family resource and youth service centers, more commonly known as Friskies, from approximately $184 to $220 per student. The ask was $200, and through the goodness of many folks on this, that is going to be increased to $220, totaling $12.7 million additional in each year, and this money will be invaluable for our students that are in needy situations. It fully funds Kentucky Teachers Retirement System at to actuarially required contribution rather than that required by law. The statutorily required contribution would be $438 million. This plan allocates an estimated $1.067 billion in the first year and $1.084 billion in the second year. Those figures are $629 million and $646 million above the statutory rate. This budget stops the longstanding practice of funding the cost of past teacher cost of living adjustments and sick leave payouts by a loan from KTRS, which the state pays on that as a 7.5% interest rate. That is a total of $479 million. This budget fully funds the state portion of health insurance for retired teachers under the age of 65, and that is for both years. It provides certified speech pathologists and audiologists the same pay subsidy as certified teachers. And we know we have a crisis there and that we do not have the numbers that we need in those positions. Going to vocational education. This budget fully funds vocational education transportation at an additional $5.4 million a year. It also adds an additional $30 million each year general fund to raise the level of funding to LAVEX and fund all school districts that operate a program with 5 or more career and technical program areas. It also provides an additional $155 million for LAVEX revitalization and renovation projects that did not receive funding from the grant program last year. I think we all realize that we have a workforce development problem, and hopefully this will be part of the solution to solving that issue. Also, I want to add that Ludlow High School, the oldest high school in the state, which was built in 1902, it adds it to the list of critical needs schools to be renovated or replaced. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman Riley. Just for clarification purposes, I want to make sure for processing the committee sub, the 3 substantive changes that the committee sub makes from the bill is the $30 million each year additional funding general fund to raise the level of funding for LAVEX and for those school districts that have a working tech program without a separate building, and provides the $155 million for LAVEX revitalization and renovation projects that complete and add on to what we started last session. And then the Ludlow High School, which is the oldest school at 1902, moving it up the list on critical needs. There may be technical catches, but otherwise those are the three substantive changes for the committee sub to the original bill filed on the 7th. Anything else further on your section, Representative Riley? Thank you so very much. Representative Reed.
Chairman, at this time, I call Representative Bentley, Chairman of the Budget Sub-Chair on Health and Family Services, to the table.
Representative Bentley, if you will introduce yourself for the record, please.
My name, excuse me. My name is Danny R. Bentley, representative for District 98 for the Commonwealth of Kentucky.
You raise your right hand. You swear or affirm to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay. Mr. Chairman, my subcommittee is Health and Family Services. Two important words to everyone in the Commonwealth: health and family. This is very dear to my heart since I'm a medical care provider myself. It's a privilege to be here, and we're looking for a better way for better health for the Commonwealth. We've thought about seniors, children, Michelle P. waivers, and I'd like to explain further. In this bill, we are going to provide necessary funding to implement the Public Health Transformation Act, HB 129 of 2020, to ensure public health departments are financially able to continuing serving our communities. Very proud of them how they've served us during the crisis, and we're going to continue that funding. We're going to allocate $2.5 million to the area health educational centers. Very successful at recruiting. We need recruiting in Kentucky where we have shortages. We're going to raise the salary and institute a retention payment for social workers, totaling approximately $25.5 million increase in the first year and $51.7 million increase in the second year. Our social workers are very short. We're going to fund 100 additional social worker positions in each year of the budget for a total of 200, and provide a method of tracking this implementation of increased staffing. We're going to raise the reimbursement rate of the 1915C Michelle P. waiver, home and community-based services waiver services by 10% in each year of the budget. We're going to fully fund the increase in the nursing home reimbursement rate implemented by fiscal year 21. Provides mental health services to rural communities through a mobile crisis service expansion. Excellent idea. Ensures funding for Medicaid growth and reduction in the federal reimbursement totaling $1.024 billion in fiscal year 23-24. This is huge. Increased funding to the eligible family resource and youth services, as Representative Riley mentioned before. We had some adds to our committee sub. We're going to clarify the SCL and Michelle P. language to ensure the current rate is maintained, and then the increases are given. Second thing, we're going to provide $7.2 million additional general fund in fiscal year 22-23 and $14.4 million general fund to expand the senior meals program as the governor recommended. My mother will be 98 next week. She receives these meals. And last, 988, the National Suicide Hotline is fully funded. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Chairman Bentley. For clarification's sake and nothing more, Committee substitute really has two substantive changes, which Chairman has already mentioned. I'm just going to highlight again. In addition to what was already proposed in House Bill 1 filed on the 7th, the sub addresses these two issues. Just make sure that the increases given each year of 10% to Michelle P's and SEL waivers, that increase is on top of a current rate holding. So the rate doesn't go down and then get an increase. It holds and then it increases. Just clarifying language. Number two, $7.2 million additional general fund money in 22-23 and $14.4 million in the following year to expand coverage for the senior meals program. Anything else, Chairman Bentley, on this subject matter?
No,
Thank
sir.
you very much. Representative Reed?
Thank you, Chairman. At this time, I call to the table Representative Fisher, Chairman of the Justice and Judiciary Subcommittee.
Before Representative Fisher helps us understand this subject matter, I want to caution clarification and analysis and a digestion of these materials. Sometimes people confuse issues that are in the judicial branch budget with what's in the executive branch budget regarding justice. Those are not the same things. So you may be thinking certain topics, and Chairman Fisher is going to cover those things that are proper before the justice subject matter in the executive branch bill. If you will, introduce yourself for the record, please.
Representative Joe Fisher, 68th House District.
You raise your right hand. Swear or affirm to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. The Subcommittee on Justice and Public Safety used the interim to reach out to our law enforcement community. There has been an alarming turnover of personnel in our Kentucky State Police and other agencies here in Kentucky, and we wanted to get to the bottom of that and how we could help resolve that issue. And this budget, once and for all, rejects the dangerous ideology that we must defund the police. Instead, we have strengthened our state police force by investing record increases in virtually every area of law enforcement. Let me give you a few examples. This budget grants a $15,000 pay increase to every Kentucky state trooper and motor vehicle enforcement officer. Now, what does that mean for a new recruit? It represents a 37.5% salary boost. This should provide a recruitment boost for the Kentucky State Police. It also gives an $8,000 raise to all telecommunication personnel. We heard from the state medical examiner's office, and we increased their state budget by $1 million. We heard from the forensic lab personnel, and that gives another pay increase and provides funding to replace their obsolete lab equipment. And this is the big allocation in this budget. $215 million to the State Police Retirement Fund. And what does this mean? KSP's employee contribution rate will go from 141% of their salary to 100% of the salary. This frees up additional funds for the state police to increase salaries of personnel and purchase equipment going forward. It also funds the purchase of an integrated body camera system for the Kentucky State Police, and this includes the expensive item of computerized storage of that information. It also provides funding to complete the purchase of a new radio system for the Kentucky State Police. And for years we've heard from the Department of Criminal Justice Training. They've come to us for money to reconstruct their indoor firing range training facility at Eastern Kentucky University. We have funded the entire purchase price of $28.5 million in this budget. And finally, for several years, our jailers and counties have been begging for a significant increase in the per diem payment to house state prisoners. This budget will raise the state per diem payment from $31.34 to $35.34 per day. This represents a 12% increase from the current contribution. Now, Mr. Chairman, this budget does reward those who protect us from those who would harm us. If there are any questions?
Chairman Fisher, I appreciate it very much. We're going to hold questions to the end. And just to note, for clarification purposes, the committee sub changes nothing in this subject matter. So House Bill 1, as set forth on this subject matter, should remain unchanged. Representative Reed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this time, I call Representative Beckler, Chairman of the Chairman Economic Development, Tourism, and Parks, to the table.
If you'll introduce yourself for the record, please.
Lynn Beckler, State Representative, District 4.
You raise your right hand. You swear or affirm to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please proceed.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the committee, I'm here today to talk a little bit about the economic development work we've done over the interim. We've had several meetings with the Tourism, Parks, and Recreation Department to address the needs of the Kentucky State Park, the nation's finest. Based on their input, we've gone ahead and we are allocating $123.6 million over the biennium for 27 specific projects to upgrade the parks. We are upgrading areas such as fitness centers, campgrounds, equipment replacement and upgrades, cottage refurbishment, etc. In addition, we've taken a look at the rural product development initiative for rural business site development. The rural areas of this state are suffering, as everyone knows, to get economic development. We are allocating $100 million in fiscal year 2022-2023 for this initiative, and we'll take a look, the legislature will take a look in 2023 based on the recommendations that that come to us. Lastly, we are providing an additional $2.5 million in each fiscal year for additional funding for the Bluegrass State Skills Program. That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman Beckler. And for clarification's sake, I assume people caught this, but the 27 renovation and refurbishment projects to the tune of $123 million plus was included in original House Bill 1. The committee singular subject matter change is an increase of allocation to $100 million for the Rural Product Development Initiative to identify industrial sites and develop the infrastructure needed around those. I'm unaware of any other changes unless they were technical in nature, but that's the only substantive change of which I am aware. Anything else, Chairman Beckler, at this time?
No, sir.
Thank you very much. Representative Reed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this time, I call to the table Representative Blanton, Chairman of the General Government Subcommittee.
If you will introduce yourself for the record, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. John Blanton. I'm representative of the 92nd District.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, sir.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Let me begin by saying thank you to all of our hardworking staff. Without them, this task would be nearly impossible. We thank you for your dedicated work. We thank you for putting up with us as well. I am very excited to bring the general government budget before you today as the state is moving forward for once in a long time of meeting so many needs that has went unaddressed for so many years within this Commonwealth. And I use the phrase needs, and we've heard that a lot today. I want to remind everyone what this budget is. This budget is every one of you that's in this room today. If you are a citizen of this Commonwealth, it's your tax dollars. We have taken a needs, reasonable approach to spending the monies. Just as if we had an influx of money at home, we wouldn't want to go out and spend it all on something when we've got debts that we have incurred. So we've taken a very, very much needs approach and funded many things that are long overdue. And it brings great honor to me because it's been a personal endeavor of mine to announce that one of the first things that we do is we provide a 6% pay increase to all public employees in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. They've been many years without any type of pay increase whatsoever, and that is for the fiscal year 22-23. However, this also addresses an issue within the salaries of our state employees. And unfortunately, we asked for this information and did not receive it during the interim, during the work of this budget. So we are requiring the Secretary of the Personnel Cabinet to develop a plan to revise the classification and compensation for funding in the second year. What does that mean? Currently in Kentucky, because there have not been any cost of living adjustment raises in so many years, we have ran into a pay disparity. We are in competition with private sector in hiring employees. And what has happened in many areas of the state, as we open up job classifications, job opportunities, people are not applying because they can get jobs in the private sector. So what we have in the Commonwealth of Kentucky is a pay scale. And that pay scale has a beginning, it has a midpoint, and it has an upper point. And we slowly inched ourselves up of beginning people at that midpoint range. What does that mean? That means we have employees within the Commonwealth that's been working 5, maybe 10 years, and we're hiring somebody tomorrow, and they're starting at equal and maybe sometimes more than somebody that has been a dedicated employee to this Commonwealth. We want to fix that problem. But it begins with the Secretary of the Personnel Cabinet developing a plan how we revise this classification and this pay disparity so we can get things balanced to where they ought to be. That's one. Second thing is very personal and dear to me, and I'll explain why in just a moment. But we are allocating another $350 million in ARPA funds toward funding of clean water and wastewater projects to be allocated to each county by population. Why is that so important to me? One of my platforms when I first began my run to come here was to bring clean drinking water in my district because we still have people without it. I had one gentleman whose drinking water he took and he showed me. It was a shame what the family was having to deal with. Just a few months ago, I got a phone call with a grown man in tears thanking me when they began laying the water line by his house. It's important that we provide clean drinking water to all those in this Commonwealth, and it also provides for economic development opportunities as well for us. Another thing, in being conscientious with taxpayer dollars, we are in this budget eliminating the practice of bonding to pay for maintenance and repair projects through agency maintenance pools. We are providing cash, not bonds, for capital projects that are less than $3 million. Bonds are something we have to pay interest rates on. And when we're paying interest rates, it's like a credit card. We're losing money every time we do it. It's just being responsible with taxpayer dollars, and we are no longer going to practice the issuance of bonds for capital projects less than $3 million. We are also going to be providing funds for the startup operation of the Bowling Green Veterans Nursing Home in the second year. Along with that will be the language that will continue in our budget that says it is the intent of the General Assembly that the next Veterans Nursing Home be in Magoffin County in eastern Kentucky. We will provide funding for additional personnel in the Office of the Attorney General, the Commonwealth's attorneys across this state, and the county attorneys across this state. We will allocate a total of $10 million towards a population-based grant pool under the Department of Local Government that will allow each representative and senator to award grants to local governments, educational units, and quasi-government agencies. That means every member of the General Assembly will equally have a portion of funding to use in their districts to help with projects. Every single member, 138 members, will have an equal amount to use in their districts. We will provide $500,000 in each year of the budget for the Raising Hope initiative. It is a farmer suicide prevention and safety program that will be moved to the Department of Agriculture. Another issue very close and dear to my heart, we will provide an increase in the CLEP funding for our police and fire across the Commonwealth from $4,000 to $4,300. Into every volunteer fire department in the Commonwealth, we will increase their funding from $11,000 to $11,500 per fire department. Also, coming from a coal region and a coal county, we will be providing after debt services. 100% coal severance monies will be returned to our coal counties from which they came. One thing that the committee sub does, and I will wrap things up with this. We will be using ARPA funds to return the unemployment insurance fund to pre-pandemic levels by allocating $312 million to our unemployment insurance fund. What does that mean? If you recall, not only did we deplete it, but we took a loan from the federal government to prop up that program. We've repaid that money. We're restoring it to the pre-pandemic levels so that we can have unemployment insurance available for those of our hardworking men and women in this Commonwealth when they are in their most dire need. Mr. Chairman, it's been an honor to work with you, every member of this staff, in creating and drafting this budget. A reasonable, responsible budget that meets the needs of this Commonwealth, that looks at after our tax dollars much like we would look after our own monies at home. It's reasonable, it's responsible, and it's a good budget. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. For clarification purposes, committee substitute, the original House Bill 1 was discussed to include $312 million in ARPA funds to restore the unemployment insurance trust fund to pre-pandemic levels. The committee sub catches that language and makes sure that's accomplished. So no new substantive materials in the committee sub. These were discussed. It's just that the language didn't catch it sufficiently, and so that has been clarified and made clear. Otherwise, no technical or substantive changes. Representative Reed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this time, I call to the table Representative Dossett, Chairman of the Personnel and Public Pensions Subcommittee.
Please introduce yourself for the record.
Representative Myron, 9th District Representative Myron Dossett.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I am proud to say that for the third consecutive budget cycle since the House became the change of the majority in the House to the Republican Party, I am proud to say that we are fully funding the actuarially required contribution for both KRS and TRS. We are also placing more than $1.2 billion additional dollars into the TRS fund. This budget will fully fund the ARC for the Kentucky retirement system at $1.2 billion per year. It will fully fund the ARC for Kentucky teachers' retirement system at an estimated $1.67 billion in the first year and $1.084 billion the second year. There will be an additional $629 million contributed in the first year, and an additional $646 million in the second year. It provides, as we have been told earlier, $215 million to the Kentucky State Police Retirement Fund to reduce the employer contribution rate from 141% to 100%. It provides $200 million to the general fund in the current year to pay on the KERS non-hazard unfunded liability. And it funds House Bill 8 subsidy for regional post-secondary institutions to ensure universities to pay their actual share of the pension debt. There are no changes in this portion of the budget from the committee sub. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman Dawson. Representative Reed, anything else on that subject matter?
Mr. Chairman, I move for adoption of House Bill 1 as amended by the committee sub.
A second?